You're standing at a butcher counter, pretending you're just browsing. Then you see it. Olive Wagyu. The number beside it doesn't feel like a price so much as a dare. Hundreds of dollars for a single pound. Your first thought is the obvious one. This is luxury. This is the kind of meat people buy to post, not to eat. But then a quieter thought slips in. If it's just luxury, why does it exist at all? Why would anyone build a whole method around it, year after year, on purpose? Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. Expensive isn't always overpriced. When we see a shocking price tag, we tend to explain it with one word: hype. And yes, sometimes that's exactly what it is. But other times, the price is doing something more boring and more honest. It's the bill for a process that's slow, hard to scale, and easy to mess up. Olive Wagyu is one of those cases. The olive-fed method is fairly recent, developed only in the last few decades. The steak wasn't always this famous or this expensive. The price rose as chefs started chasing it, and as more people learned what the method actually costs to repeat. To understand the price, don't start with the steak. Start with the place. A small island built around olives. In Japan, there's a small island called Shodoshima, sitting in the Seto Inland Sea. A little over a century ago, olive trees were introduced there from Greece. Over time, olive oil became one of the island's major industries. And that matters for one simple reason. Olive oil production leaves leftovers. Not scraps you can ignore either. Heavy, damp residue. Pulp that still holds oil and moisture. It's the kind of byproduct that forces a practical question in a small place. What do we do with all of this? That leftover is where Olive Wagyu begins. What Wagyu already does well. Before we add the word olive, it helps to remember why Wagyu is already famous. Wagyu is known for marbling, those fine threads of fat that run through the muscle. When the meat heats up, that fat melts quickly, which is why Wagyu can feel tender even in thin slices. But it's not only the amount of fat, it's also the type of fat. High-grade Wagyu tends to have higher levels of oleic acid, which many people associate with a smoother mouthfeel and a rich aroma that doesn't feel as heavy. So Wagyu isn't just beef. It's beef where the fat is part of the craft. On Shodoshima, a longtime cattle farmer named Masaki Ishii wanted to create Wagyu even richer in oleic acids, something you could notice not once, but consistently. And he didn't start with a new breed or a new miracle supplement. He started with the island's leftover problem. It's not fresh olives. Olive Wagyu sounds like cows eating fresh olives. That's not the trick. The key ingredient is olive pomace, the leftover pulp after olives are pressed for oil. It's not glamorous. It looks like dense, dark mash. But it still contains a lot of oil, which means it still contains energy. Using fresh olives would be expensive and inconsistent. Pomace, on the other hand, is abundant precisely because it's a byproduct. The challenge is turning it into something cattle can eat safely and consistently. In other words, the method isn't built on a fancy ingredient. It's built on a difficult transformation. The hard part no one sees. Turning wet pulp into feed. Olive pomace isn't like dry grain. It's wet, oily, and unstable. If you've ever handled something like that, anything damp and rich, you know what happens if it sits. It changes. It heats. It smells sour. It becomes unusable. To use pomace as cattle feed, it has to be dried properly. And drying it is difficult and costly because the pulp still holds oil. Oil slows drying, and moisture invites spoilage. If the drying is uneven, You don't just waste one batch, you risk the stability of the cattle's diet. This is the part most people never imagine when they see olive fed. They picture a simple swap: add olives, get better beef. The reality is closer to manufacturing than to romance. Machines running, heat, timing, storage, consistency. Masaki spent years, about 6, figuring out how to dry and prepare the pumice reliably. And even after you solve it, you keep paying for it. Equipment, labor, fuel, space, and the daily discipline of doing it the same way again. That's when the price begins to feel less mysterious. The most expensive ingredient: time. Feed is only one layer. Time is the layer that never discounts itself. In many Wagyu operations, cattle are typically processed around 24 to 26 months. Olive Wagyu doesn't ship out until around 30 months. That extra time is built into the system. 4 to 6 extra months doesn't sound dramatic until you picture what it means in real life. Every day those cattle are still there is another day of feed, water, cleaning, monitoring, and space. Another day your barn is full. Another day you take on risk, weather, health issues, market changes. The simplest way to say it is this: you can't rush the calendar, and you can't avoid paying while it moves. By this point, you can almost feel the price forming: harder input, longer timeline. The island math. Scarcity you can count. Now add the final pressure. The supply is small. Today, there are about 2,500 olive-fed cattle on Shotoshima. On Masaki's farm, there are only around 20 head of cattle. That's not a niche, that's a bottleneck. And it's small in a very specific way. It depends on a local olive industry producing pomace. It depends on having the capacity to dry that pomace. It depends on farmers willing to raise cattle longer. If any part of that chain is limited, the whole supply stays limited. Compare that to large Wagyu-producing regions such as Kagoshima or Miyazaki, where Wagyu production has been established for decades at a far bigger scale. Olive Wagyu doesn't have that industrial cushion. Its supply is shaped by an island's size and an island's pace. When something is that constrained, even small demand can feel big. How it left the island, and why it spread. At first, Masaki didn't advertise the olive feed method. He refined it quietly. He even kept it secret from buyers early on. Then Japan's livestock world took hits. In 2010, a foot-and-mouth disease outbreak in Miyazaki Prefecture damaged parts of the industry. After that, countries including the United States suspended beef imports from Japan. In 2011, the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami struck, adding more strain during a period of recovery. In that climate, Masaki pushed to strengthen local production. By 2012, he led efforts to work with more local olive farmers, and other Shotoshima cattle farmers started adopting the method. Not long after, Olive Wagyu began shipping beyond Shotoshima and beyond Kagawa Prefecture. Notice what didn't change. The process stayed hard, the timeline stayed long, and the supply stayed limited. The story traveled faster than the cattle ever could. Why chefs chase it? Chefs don't chase ingredients just because they're expensive. They chase them because they behave reliably, and because they offer something distinctive. Olive Wagyu gives chefs both a narrative and a texture. The narrative is clear: a specific island, a specific method, a local byproduct turned into feed. And the eating experience tends to match what Wagyu lovers already want: intense marbling, tenderness, and a rich, fat profile. When chefs find something like that, and the supply is small, they don't casually buy it. They reserve it. They build menu moments around it. That kind of demand doesn't spread evenly. It concentrates. And concentrated demand hitting a tiny supply chain is how a price climbs and stays high. If you enjoy this kind of story, where an everyday label hides a whole system underneath, consider subscribing to Secrets of Simple Things. We'll keep pulling on small details until the larger mechanism comes into view. Now let's name the real reason this is expensive, in plain language. What you're really paying for. With Olive Wagyu, you're not paying for luxury as an idea. You're paying for the cost of repeating a difficult loop. A local byproduct becomes feed. That feed requires costly drying and careful handling. The cattle are raised longer than typical. The scale stays small. That's why the price isn't random. It's structural. In many expensive foods, the most important ingredients aren't listed on the label. They're things like coordination, patience, and capacity. If those are limited, the price reflects it, whether the product is fashionable or not. A 5-second rule. Use this on any shockingly expensive food. When you see a price tag that makes you blink, ask 3 quick questions. What extra work does this require? How much extra time does it take? How limited is the supply? Could you roughly count it? If the answers are a lot, a long time, and very limited, then the price usually isn't just marketing. It's the visible edge of an invisible process. The price tag as a map. Back at that butcher counter, you might still decide it's not worth it. That's completely reasonable. The point here isn't that you should buy Olive Wagyu. The point is that the number on the label is often a trail. If you follow it, you find work you never saw, time you never counted, and limitations you never noticed. Olive Wagyu is a reminder that some expensive things are expensive because someone built them that way, carefully, slowly, and in a place that can't easily produce more just because the world wants it. And once you start thinking like that, you can't unsee it. A price tag isn't only a number. Sometimes it's a map. If you enjoyed this kind of story, where a simple label hides a whole system underneath, please subscribe to Secrets of Simple Things. It really helps the channel, especially in the early days. And I'd love to hear your thoughts too. Leave a comment with your time versus scarcity versus taste vote, and tell me the most shocking food price you've ever seen. We read the comments, and we try to reply as often as we can. See you in the next Simple Thing.